On a crisp September morning in 1066, the green fields of Yorkshire would witness the end of an era. Here, under the bright English sky, warriors from across the North Sea clashed with the shield walls of England in a battle so fierce, so unexpected, that it shattered a Viking dream of conquest in a single day. This was not just a battle for land, it was a collision between two worlds, the fading age of the Norse raiders and the rising tide of medieval kingship. The sea that September was calm, but the horizon was anything but empty. Out of the grey morning mist, a forest of sails rose like ghostly spectres, blotting out the sun. At their prows were the carved beasts of Norse legend, snarling dragons, coiling serpents, and raven-headed figureheads that seemed to watch the shore hungrily. This was no mere raid. This was an invasion. At the head of the fleet stood Harald Hardrada, King of Norway, his banner, the land waster, rippling in the wind. It was a banner that had flown over battlefields from Constantinople to the rivers of Rus, for Hardrada was not merely a king, he was a warrior forged in fire, a man who had once fought in the ranks of the Byzantine Varangian Guard and returned with a fortune in gold and a mind honed by decades of war. His ally sat beside him in another longship, Tostig Godwinson, exiled Earl of Northumbria, younger brother to England's King Harold. Tostig's eyes burned not with loyalty to Norway, but with the cold, personal fire of revenge. Cast out by his own people, rejected by his brother, he had found in Hardrada's cause the perfect vessel for his hatred. The fleet numbered more than 300 longships, some say closer to 350, carrying perhaps 8,000 men, warriors in mail and leather, archers with bundles of arrows, and housecarls wielding the great Dane axe. The oars bit into the sea in perfect unison, their rhythm echoing like a war drum over the waves. They entered the river Humber with practiced precision, slipping into England's watery arteries as if they had been born there. Villages along the banks were set aflame, smoke curled into the sky, blackening the air as the Norsemen moved inland. Their first true test came at Fulford Gate on September 20th. Here, two English earls, Edwin of Mercia and Morcar of Northumbria, attempted to halt their advance. The battle was brutal and swift. The Norse shield wall absorbed the English assault, then burst forward in a counterattack that shattered their line. Many drowned in the marshes as they fled, others were cut down where they stood. York, the jewel of the north, had no choice but to surrender. Hardrada was triumphant. The northern kingdom was his, at least in name. He demanded hostages and supplies, planning to consolidate his control before marching south to claim the crown of England itself. But, in the warm glow of victory, he made one fatal miscalculation. He believed Harald Godwinson was still far to the south, tethered to the coast by the threat of William of Normandy. The truth was far deadlier. When the news reached King Harald Godwinson, he was not in the north. He was on England's southern coast, his eyes fixed on the grey waters of the Channel, waiting for William of Normandy's invasion to come. For weeks, his army had stood ready along the shore, a shield wall of flesh and steel against a fleet that never appeared. Then came the message. The north was burning. York had fallen. Earl Edwin and Earl Morcar had been defeated. The banner of Norway now flew over England's second city, and Harald Hardrada, the last great Viking, claimed the north as his own. For most kings, the choice would have been political. Send envoys, bide time, prepare slowly. But Harald Godwinson was not most kings. His blood boiled with urgency, and his sense of duty was sharpened by the fact that the invaders were not strangers. Among them was his own brother, Tostig, a traitor to crown and kin alike. He made his decision in an instant. He would march north, and he would march now. What followed was one of the most remarkable feats of endurance in medieval military history. Harold gathered his housecarls, hardened, full-time warriors clad in mail, and the furred levies from the shires. With banners raised and spears over their shoulders, they began their journey. From London to York is nearly 185 miles. Harold's army covered it in 4 days. They moved like a storm across the heart of England, sleeping little, eating on the march, boots pounding dirt roads from dawn to dusk. Rain fell in cold sheets, soaking woolen cloaks, yet the column never slowed. At night, they collapsed beside roadside fires, waking before sunrise to move again. Messengers galloped ahead to gather reinforcements along the way. The people of the villages stood in awe as the king's host thundered past. Thousands of armed men in tight formation, the iron of their mail shirts clinking like the rattle of distant thunder. Harald Hardrada, drunk on his victory at Fulford, believed Harold Godwinson still anchored to the south, watching for Normans. In his mind, there was no urgency. The English king could not possibly arrive for weeks, but Harold's march was faster than rumor itself. By the time word reached the Viking camp that the English were coming, the reality was already upon them. On the morning of 25th September 1066, Hardrada and his men lounged in the warm sun near the village of Stamford Bridge. Many had left their mail armor behind in York, thinking they faced only a routine exchange of hostages from the city. The air smelled of late summer grass, the river ran gently past, and the day seemed as calm as any in peacetime. Then, in the distance, a dust cloud rose, a great smudge on the horizon. The earth trembled with the rhythm of marching boots and pounding hooves. It was not the wind. It was Harold. The Vikings did not expect a fight that day. The sun was warm, the grass was high, and the air held the lazy stillness of late September. Harald Hardrada's men lounged near the river Derwent, some mending gear, others playing dice, many without armor. Their mail shirts, heavy and stifling in the sun, were back in York with the ships. Then came the sound. At first, it was a faint hum, a rhythm in the earth, but it grew into the unmistakable thunder of boots and hooves. A Viking scout sprinted from the horizon, shouting words that cut through the calm like a blade. The English are here!" Panic rippled through the Norse camp. Warriors scrambled to grab shields and axes. Harald Hardrada's voice roared commands as men rushed toward the narrow wooden bridge that spanned the river. They needed time to form ranks, time for reinforcements to return from York. One man bought them that time. A towering Viking, armed with a massive Dane axe, took his stand in the middle of the bridge. Alone, he faced the oncoming English vanguard. Again and again, English warriors charged, and again, his axe rose and fell, splitting shields and skulls. Some say he held the bridge for nearly an hour, his strength and courage buying precious moments for his comrades. It was not brute force that ended his stand, but cunning. An English soldier crept beneath the bridge and thrust a spear upward, striking the lone defender down. With the bridge cleared, Harold's army poured across. The Viking line was still forming on the far bank, a patchwork of warriors, some armored, many bare-chested in the unseasonable heat. But the Norsemen were veterans, and their shield wall rose like an iron wave. The first collision was like thunder. Spears shattered, swords flashed, and men grappled in the crush, slipping on blood-slick grass. Hardrada, towering above most, fought at the heart of the line, his blue cloak flying as he cut down foes with sweeping blows of his sword. The battle raged for hours under the blazing sun. Then, in a moment that would echo through history, Harald Hardrada surged forward in a furious charge. An English arrow found the gap in his armor, piercing his throat. He fell, clutching the land-waster banner, the great raven of Norway, dipping toward the ground. Harold, offering mercy, called out to his brother, "You can have your lands again. I will pardon you. Stand down." Tostig's answer was defiance. The fighting continued. Soon Tostig too lay dead, cut down in the crush of battle. The Norse line crumbled. Many Vikings broke and fled toward the ships at Rickle, only to be hunted down by English horsemen. Of the great army that had landed weeks before, only a fraction survived, and those survivors swore never to return to England. The age of the Viking invasions was over, but Harald Godwinson's victory was bought at a terrible price. His men were exhausted, their numbers thinned. And even as the dead were buried by the Derwent, word came from the south. William of Normandy had landed. Of the 300 longships that brought Hardrada's army to England, only about 24 were needed to carry the survivors back to Norway. The Viking dream of conquering England died on that field. But Harald Godwinson had no time to celebrate. Even as the bodies cooled, word reached him that William of Normandy had landed in the south. The king turned his weary army south once more, racing toward the fateful Battle of Hastings.